This is just a short follow-up video to our experience with Windy City Theater today. I promised I would give a little bit of additional information about the common information effect and some of the solutions and remedies to this. So um, a sort of serious process problem that's illustrated by the Windy City Theater case is that diversity is a potential benefit, especially when we have diverse knowledge and perspectives related to different functions or disciplines in a team. But a serious challenge to this is that the unique knowledge shared by or held by people who are in such cross-functional teams is often not utilized in the solutions. So some of the reasons why this happens and why we care about this is that we know from research that when teams are able to effectively share their knowledge, they have significantly higher performance. So in meta-analysis, looking across many different studies, there's a very strong correlation between teams' ability to out and share and leverage their unique knowledge and their performance. I shared this already at the end of our interactive time together, but just to reiterate the common information effect, uh, the research effect or research finding is that teams are much more likely to discuss and believe and use information that they share or is similar, and not the information that is unique from the different knowledge areas or functions that people hold. And I shared some reasons why this happens. And I also shared some things that do and don't work for this. I'll just line this up. I'm having a little screen problem here. But basically, just talking more definitely doesn't work, and it's a serious problem from unstructured discussion. So in the decision-making lecture, I talked about the nominal group technique, and our textbook also talks about the nominal group technique. That's a very structured way to make sure that everybody in a team provides inputs and their perspectives are discussed. So that's one method that can be done, is just to make sure that when you're having meetings, you have a means to actually ask people what their perspectives are and what particular unique viewpoints they have. And a learning leader seeks that out, or people playing that role in a team seek that out. Also making sure that the team has high trust and high psychological safety so that people feel comfortable raising differing viewpoints in the team. And then the last thing that I mentioned was the transactive memory systems. But what I want to actually also say before this is another reason why that overstaffing bias is a problem, because groups also are affected by the common information effect more seriously when people don't communicate evenly. And in the communication lecture I recorded online, that research by Sandy Pentland with the sociometric badges shows that teams that perform the best have high density in their communication networks. And what we see is, as in this picture from this research, is that as we add people, we have a serious drop off in the percentage of people actually participating. So even in a group as small as 4 people, typically 2 of those people are going to do 62% of the talking. When we move up to an 8-person group, 3 people do over 77% of the talking. So these are also reasons why, if we let teams have unstructured discussion in meetings, there's a very low probability that you're going to access the unique knowledge held by teams of diverse experts. So one of the other things we want to think about is promoting knowledge utilization. I'm just going to try to fit this a little bit. There we go. That's better. And again, in the textbook and in the online lectures about psychological states, I talked about team mind or team mental models. And we did see this in Windy City Theater, and really almost, I think, every one of the teams did this. The team mental model is the idea that there's a shared understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. And that is a powerful way to draw people kind of from those silos and move them away from using agendas that are personal or representative of their functional area to think kind of higher and more strategically. So having a team mental model, a shared mental model of what you're trying to accomplish. In the case of Windy City Theater, it's to innovate and expand revenue. And so if we can think that way, we can pull people away from those information silos. And then in terms of common information effect, supporting the development of a transactive memory system is going to help teams leverage their unique knowledge. And a transactive memory system is basically the fact that team members know who on their team knows what and what kind of particular expertise or skill set or knowledge or experience each other has. And we know from research that teams with a better developed transactive memory system, where there's sort of a shared understanding in the team of who knows what, those teams significantly outperform teams that don't have a transactive memory system. And this is even more so the more diverse you have a team in terms of knowledge, experience, backgrounds, functions, etc. So we want to try to support the development of a transactive memory system to reduce the impact or the occurrence of the common information effect. So how do we do this? Well, these graphs show a couple of different outcomes of research. And one of the key mechanisms here is that when people train together as a team, they have higher transactive memory. If they train individually, they have lower transactive memory and they have more errors made in the process because they don't get the benefit of the knowledge and perspective of the different team members. So training together in this case might be really important for tactical teams like surgical teams, cockpit crews, nuclear power plant control crews that stay together and perform a kind of well-defined set of tasks. Definitely training together as a team is important. It's less common and maybe less possible for the kind of problem-solving knowledge teams that many of us sit on. But this is again why familiarity and prior shared experience of team members can be a way to improve performance and a way to make sure that teams leverage unique knowledge, because it offers a substitute for training together. So one of the other things we know is that working together, that teams who spend longer time together working together tend to develop better transactive memory systems. So it's another argument for trying to limit unnecessary turnover in teams, because those teams are likely to develop a better transactive memory system and better leverage their unique knowledge. And this slide again just basically says, look, to develop a transactive memory system, you're better off in terms of performance. In this case, this was an assembly task. The teams that both trained together and stayed in the same team over multiple performance episodes had the best performance in terms of the lowest errors. And what this is interesting, it shows that even if you train together, if you are reassigning people, if you're constantly sort of churning and having turnover in teams, those teams actually did the worst. They had the most errors. So the combination of training together in teams and staying together and keeping people together so they have shared history, shared experience, and familiarity tends to produce the best performance, particularly for repetitive tactical work. Work is not tactical, right? When it is creative or problem solving, then there are some other things we can do. And the picture I show you here is from some experience that I had. I was on the school board of my daughter's school, which is the Twin Cities German Immersion School. And this school is a public charter school. And as a public charter school, it means that it's an independent school district of one school. And therefore, the school has its own school board. And that school board is elected, and it's elected and has to, by law, include teachers. it includes parents, and it includes outside community members. And every year, approximately 3 people roll off the board. The terms of the board are typically 3 years long. And so when I came on the board, I observed that, there was a kind of a extended period of time, several months, where we weren't performing very well because new members didn't really know the other members very well, and we didn't really know who knew what. And so it took us a lot of time to, I guess, feel a sense of trust, feel a sense of, whose knowledge and information and frankly opinions were really valid based on their experience and their knowledge. So I worked with the board. I was a member myself, but worked with the board chair, and I was the vice chair for a period of time as we were developing more training for these school boards. And what I did is I went out and looked at, there's quite a lot of research on charter schools and charter school boards. And some of that research kind of catalogs information and knowledge and experience that boards should have, that they should be accessed through their members. So what you'd want to do is have a board that has diversity. And part of why the laws in Minnesota require that not only teachers, but parents and community members be on the board, and that the boards have some diversity with respect to who's on the board, is to try to make sure that they access and have enough of these different sorts of expertise in the board. If it was a teacher-only board, then we may not really, first of all, have the parent perspective. They may not understand law and government the same way that people who are community members who are recruited to have that knowledge would provide to the board. So I created a grid like this, and I basically, put all the current board members across the top. And I gave this to each board member, and I said, please fill this out and check, where you've had particular training, particular expertise, or particular experience, right? So this is it's a language immersion school. And so if I was Anita, I might say, yes, I am a teacher who has done graduate school training in language acquisition. And so I know something about language immersion. I also lived in Germany for 10 years, and I spent a lot of time teaching there, and I do understand the school system and the curriculum there. I'm an educator. That's my category. Maybe we want to think about, do we have gender diversity or identity diversity in this team to understand different experiences of the children in the school. So I would give this to each person, and they would fill it out. And then we would come together in an early training session, and we would talk around the table and share this. And what I created from this then was I tabulated the entire board's expertise. And we could look at this expertise and we could say, okay, are there any places where we are lacking, first of all, and we should be trying to recruit? So, okay, well, physical architecture engineer, nothing. Nobody has this background. And I can tell you that at 3 points in the school's history, the school had to move as it grew. And so it needed to identify and locate a new building. And just this last year, the school was embroiled in a controversy because the building that it purchased had an old decommissioned church building on the site, and the school needed to remove that building to expand. And it created a tremendous amount of conflict with the community. And so, if you didn't have somebody on your board with that experience to understand, could you even think about reusing that structure, you would have a lack of ability to make the strongest decisions you needed to make. And what you'd want to know then too is who knows these things, right? So if you needed to tap into banking, right? Well, we only have one member who has direct banking experience. And sometimes as a board, we needed to make a decision about choosing a new bank or deciding how to make decisions about trade-offs versus interest versus other kinds of fees and charges that we would be levied against us depending on which bank we chose. So, if we know that there's at least this one person who has this banking background, then we can rely on that person's input and hopefully actually, leverage our decisions based a little bit more on who knows what. So this is just an example of ways that you could think about when you're forming a new team, or if you're having significant member turnover, that you could identify what are some of the key areas of expertise you need for the task and the problem the team is working on. And do you actually have that present in the team? And then can you make sure that people know who knows what? Because you can accelerate the formation of a transactive memory system by this kind of exercise. So in summary, to one of the ways to prevent the common information effect from harming the outcome of a diverse team's performance is to promote this idea of team mind and find out about each other. You can do this in structured ways, and you can make sure that the team has a shared mental model of the purpose and the goals the team has for its task. And then we can also work to try to reduce the idea of information silos and promote even discussion. Use techniques like nominal group technique to make sure that you're hearing from everybody. Or as a learning leader, make sure that you're monitoring discussion and making sure that there is even and dense communication and not dominance by one, two, or three people who are carrying the discussion, because just naturally that means that their knowledge is going to be weighted heavier than the people who aren't communicating as much. And that doesn't necessarily mean that their knowledge is more valid or more useful to the outcome that the team is trying to achieve.